Jacob, I've been thinking recently. I think we should have nicknames. Nicknames on the podcast.
Like what?
Like in Reservoir Dogs, right? We can be different colors, right? So I'll be Mr. Blonde, right? Our beautiful listeners, our beautiful, lovely listeners will be Mr. Orange, right? And you could be Mr. Pink.
Mr. Pink?
Yeah.
Why do I have to be Mr. Pink?
Well, because you're up. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob? I mean, Mr. Pink. How you doing today?
Oh. Okay. I am well, Mr. Blonde. Yeah. Mr. Very, very, very dirty blonde.
The dirtiest blonde. So dirty, it looks like it's brown, but it's not. It's blonde. Trust me.
Yep. Do you think of yourself as a blonde?
I do not think of myself as a blonde. No. I've considered it though. I have considered going blonde.
I would say it's a very light brown, or maybe a very, very close to blonde.
Yeah. In the summer, I get blonder. Like if I have short hair in the summer, I'm a strawberry blonde. But most of the time, I'm just kind of like a light brown hair.
Strawberry?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Look at me. I know hair color.
So a little pinkish.
There's a little hue, a little pink hue. Some would say it's pinkish my scalp being sunburnt because it's so hot out. But I would say it's because I'm a beautiful strawberry blonde colored boy.
Yes.
I have considered dyeing my hair platinum blonde.
Have you seen How I Met Your Mother?
I've seen parts of it. I think I've seen the episode that you're talking about.
There's a moment in the show where one of the characters, his name's Ted, is like vaguely is like, it'd be stupid if I went blonde. And everyone, all of his friends look at each other and like they have like a conversation in their heads just through looks. It's like, if we say the right words here, we can get him to dye his hair blonde. And that's just what I thought in my head there. I was like, if I say the right words here, maybe I can get Charlie to dye his hair blonde.
I would love that. I have now, also, I got a gift today. I got a present, which is very sweet. I got a cup from my grandmother. Of course.
Oh.
It says, I never dreamed I'd grow up to be a super cool grandson, but here I am, killing it. So I just want the listeners to know.
Grandparents are the best, aren't they?
She's great. I love my grand.
So supportive.
But I want everyone in the audience to know that I am currently and will forever be drinking out of that mug during the podcast. And I am killing it.
That's nice. I'm drinking out of a plastic mug with the name of the school that my sister went to with water in it. So.
Oh, lame.
I think that's equally as cool.
I don't think so. But to agree to disagree. What's your show? You have a pitch. You've got a TV show that you're going to pitch to us.
I do. So the idea is an inn that's right next to it's like on the edge of a dungeon.
Okay.
And it's where all the heroes go right before they go into the dungeon. And everyone that goes into the dungeon either dies or gets maimed and leaves. Mm-hmm. And the show name I have is Dead Man's Inn. I am open to suggestions, though. I kind of want something a little bit more comedic.
Yeah.
If we can have a pun title, that'd be nice. So if you come up with a pun,
I'm thinking
that would be great.
My first thought goes to, title-wise, because that's like a tutorial area and like a video game.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I feel like we could play with that in some sort of a way, you know? Like we could do like a fantasy name, but it's basically just tutorial level. Or level 1 or whatever.
Well, the jokes that I were going for is that you're gonna die here. Like, I don't know, final rest in, something like that. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of. But other things work too. Because the idea is that everyone that goes through this inn, it's generally their last meal. They're going to die when they go in. Almost everyone dies. If they make it out, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
So it's not a good place.
No, sounds bad. And our characters run the inn, I assume?
Yes, mostly. So I'll run through the characters now. So first we have Borg. Borg is the innkeeper, the owner. Mm-hmm. He's a very aged, old Viking-looking dude with one eye. He mans the bar, probably played by Dave Bautista or someone that looks like him, kind of big, muscular, but kind of can be a little funny if he needs to, but also has the ability to just be like,
Scary.
This guy has a thing where he will just stare forward for a long time and like just not say a word and then just jump into a story or like just say something that doesn't make any sense,
I like that.
Like it's like you can see it, like he's just staring forward away. It's like he's in a different world thinking about something completely different, trapped in like a memory, and then he just snaps back to the real world like nothing even happened. I'm sure you know people like that where like they just think of something, they stare forward, and then they just snap back like nothing happened.
I do that. I do that way too much. It really bothers people.
He gets lost in stories about old adventures. So he's like an old hero adventurer, but the only stories he tells are like really boring ones. And when he tells like the exciting part, he'll just run through real quick.
Yeah. Okay.
So he'll spend an hour talking about like the onion soup he had that his squire packed him. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, I ate the soup. It was really bad. There's too many, chunks in it, and I really hated it. And then we slayed the dragon, and then we got back, and I got new onions, and I chopped them up finely. And he's talking about all the recipe and all that. And he's like, then we killed the Wizard King, and then like just running through these like huge adventures really quick. He's retired, and he retired before the labyrinth. The labyrinth is the dungeon that's right next to them was discovered. But says he'd do it easy in his day. Like, so he's like, this is nothing. If I was out there, I would go through the labyrinth so easily. No one has finished the labyrinth. That's the big, the big draw. That's why there's tons of people always coming to their inn, because they want to take on this big famous dungeon.
Yeah. As you do.
Next we have Fraude, Fraude. She's the barmaid. She claims to have beaten it, but her story changes every time she tells it. And she's constantly fleecing / scamming the patrons. So she, she's in it for the money. She, talks about how she beat it. She'll, promise, tricks for people to like how they get through it easily and just try to steal their money and everything. She'll take their armor and offer to give them enchanted armor that will get them through the mazes, riddles or something. And she'll, just give them something cheap.
Yeah.
Take their stuff and sell it. Next we have Filber. Filber is a bar regular who always comes back. So he's one of these few people that does the labyrinth, doesn't die, and makes it back, but he doesn't actually complete it. So he'll come back with a missing body part every time. That's kind of like the running joke, is they'll miss first he's like, missing a foot, then he's missing a leg, then an arm or a hand or something. He's very like Shakespearean singing hero. Now, when I say Shakespearean, I mean like operatic. I don't mean like literally Shakespearean.
Yeah.
I mean like, he's got like he talks in that way is what I mean. He's always singing. He's constantly breaking into song. He's very theatrical. He's like a theater student, really.
That's okay. So we've got our.
Yeah, we've got Fraude, we've got Borg, and we've got Filber so far.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm picturing all these people, and I'm assigning them actors and actresses.
I do actually, I didn't have one for Fraude, but I did have an actor for Filber. Joshua Sassy, or Sasse, I don't know how to say his last name. He was in this show called Gallivant, which my sister likes.
I fucking love Gallivant.
Yeah, so the guy that plays Gallivant, I was thinking.
Okay, I like that.
So he's a big, boisterous singer dude,
Does he sing at all in the show? Because I think it would be kind of funny if he broke into song every once in a while and no one else sang.
Yeah, no, like that's what I was kind of thinking of. Like, for him, the world is a musical, but he's the only person that's in the musical. And like everyone just thinks he's a weirdo. And sometimes he'll like start singing and someone will just bash his head in with a like a guitar or something because they want him to stop. Then we have Princess. She's Borg's daughter, so the innkeep. She's very sassy, a heavy drinker, likes to make fun of the heroes. Yeah, so she's just like thinks that they're just wasting their lives. That you shouldn't be doing this. You're stupid. You're an idiot. Like, why would you go into this dungeon? Because they're all trying to save the actual princess of the kingdom. and she's trapped in the dungeon because there's a dragon guarding her or whatever. It's the classic scenario.
Yeah.
And they're trying to go save her. That's why everyone wants to do the labyrinth, all because of the glory of doing the labyrinth. And then we have Meek. Meek is the bus girl, so bus boy, but girl. I don't know. Is there a term for
busser?
For bus girl? Busser?
Busser.
Okay. Busser. So Meek's the busser. She wants to be a hero, but is very puny and also broke. So she's working at the inn to try to get enough money so she could do the labyrinth, like get armor and stuff and get training. And she's always practicing, but she's constantly getting verbally abused by literally everyone who thinks she's just a puny little, piece of crap trying to do something when she's like, she's like 10 or 12. And she's talking about how she's going to do it. And they're like, this kid's not doing it.
That's hilarious. They're just bullying a child.
And yeah, but sorry, I said she was like 10 or 12. She's like maybe like 15, 16, where it's getting to the point where it's not like cute anymore that she's what she's doing, where they're like, come on, you gotta be reasonable here. You're not cut out for this.
You gotta, at some point, you gotta face the music.
Yeah, you do. You're cut out for it, kid. Then we have Mrs. Wicker Whip. She runs the kitchen with an iron fist, hates everyone, especially Meek. Her and Meek have like a Tom and Jerry relationship. So cat and mouse sort of thing.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Wicker's Whip, the reason she's there is that she's dedicated to making everyone the perfect last meal. She really likes crafting the last. It's kind of morbid, she likes making the perfect meal for these people that are about to die. And of course she hates, she always makes the shittiest meal, she's constantly making better meals for Filbur, because she has to top the last one she did, because he's going to die this time, right? She's like convinced he's going to die this time. Yeah. This is going to be it. And so she has to constantly improve her meals, which gets harder and harder each time because he keeps coming back. Yeah. And then we have we're going into some short-term characters here. Sir Roland Wipe. Sir Roland Wipe is a very chivalrous knight. He's kind of like Lancelot, the greatest knight in the kingdom. And he's here to save the princess. And then we have our main character. His name's Sylus Laine, or Sylus Laine. What's the joke? Slain.
Yeah.
Ha. He's Sir Roland Wipe's squire. He was a country boy who's got switched with the king's son after a quest was declared. We'll get into that in a little bit. He's played by Dominic Sessa. I don't know if you saw The Holdovers. Movie just came out recently.
I have not.
But he plays like the main boy in The Holdovers. Like this. He's like, and in the movie The Holdovers, he's like this high school senior who is kind of like disaffected, but really needs to stay in school because he's about to get sent to military school if he gets kicked out again. Mm-hmm. Good actor anyway, but I thought he was good for this role. He's very underprepared for everything. He's kind of excited to be Sir Roland Wipe's new squire, but we'll get into what happens in a little bit. All right, those are the characters. Are you ready for the pilot?
I am, but I do want you to listen to some of the names that I've been thinking of while you've been explaining our characters. So I've been trying to do a little bit of alliteration. So I have a few that's like the Adventurer's Alehouse, right? Or Adventurer's Last Stop, The Last Night Inn, Last Meal Regrets. But I like the Bitter End Bar or the Bitter End Beer Parlor. That's I think the best one I've got thus far.
Oh.
The Bitter End Beer Parlor.
But you could almost do a pun with the bitter end, the bitter inn.
Yeah,
the bitter end. I don't know how you'd spell that, so it would be a good pun. The bitter inn, the bitter end.
The bitter end. Maybe we could just have it.
Bitter end inn.
We could.
Maybe the bitter end inn.
There you go. The bitter end inn. That's the name.
I like that one.
I feel like that works perfectly. Yeah.
I like it. That's good. That's the new title. The bitter end inn. The pilot. Very exciting. That's the name of this podcast. VeryReasonable Pilots podcast. Here's the pilot. The tavern door bursts open in the night. Rain's pouring down. Sylus Laine walks in with broken, wide eyes. He sits down at the bar as everyone's looking over. They're all confused, like, how is he back? How is he alive? He survived. what's going on? A huge crowd surrounds him. All the, the characters I named. They're asking what happened. Borg pours him a drink. He takes a shot, and he opens his mouth. Cut to a beautiful open on a beautiful sky and a nice flowery, field meadow. Pan to a big old castle in this, on a nice hill, in this big city around it. We go in, and Sylus and a bunch of other squires are joking. They're in the training yard, playing with their weapons. Just, they're like high school boys, hanging out before their next class, essentially.
Yeah. Like we used to do back when
then,
we were
we have a classic. Oh yes, sitting in the hallways,
just throwing rotten apples at the weird kid.
Yep.
Those halcyon days.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so he's joking with the other squires, and a classic scenario: the heir to the king and squire and real squire to Sir Roland Wipe, the greatest knight in the kingdom, comes in. And that this is kind of like the Malfoy character to our Harry Potter. He comes in, he starts bullying our guy, kicking him over, kicks his sword out from under him, and then they as he's bullying him, the training instructor comes in. It's like, hey, get your boys, come on, we're about to start our lesson, and they're starting up, and they're all getting paired up into partners. Originally, Sylus goes with a friend, but the king's son, the heir, our Malfoy character. It's like, I'll fight Sylus, and Sylus is like, oh shit, this isn't good, because Sylus, he's not very good, Yeah. He's not the squire to the best knights, so he doesn't get the best training.
Yeah.
And he's also just some kid, and so he gets his ass absolutely kicked by the Mr. Malfoy.
Good.
And after training, the king comes in with Sir Roland Wipe, and they're both arguing intensely, and it keeps getting bigger. The argument keeps getting bigger and bigger, while the training is still going on. And then after training's over, it finally bursts over, boils over, and Wipe declares his intent to save the princess. And there's sort of a cultural thing that's like, if the knight declares he's going to do something, he has to do it regardless of the king's wishes. If he's going to go on a quest, he has to save. He can't go back on the quest now because that's cowardly.
Yeah.
So at this big feast, and it's also, this worries the king's son, because he's like, oh shit, and Sylus starts laughing, because this means the squire has to come with the knight, which we'll explain. So the king's son's like, fuck, I gotta go with this guy, and Sylus is laughing. It's like, you might have kicked my ass in training today, but now you're gonna have to go out and do this quest, and you're probably gonna die, so fuck you.
Yeah, as you do.
And so the whole feast afterwards, to celebrate Sir Roland Wipe and the king's heir leaving, he's bullying the king's son, laughing at him with his friends about how he has to leave and how he's gonna die out there, and Sylus thinks he's getting the last laugh. And the king approaches Sylus. He's never talked to the king before, and tells him, the good news. He's been promoted. He's going to be Sir Roland Wipe's new squire, and his son is being sent off to a watchtower. He's being punished for for how he brutally attacked Sylus during training. Unwarranted attack. This is all obviously just a cover up so that we can find a way to switch.
And I bet the watchtower,
Sylus.
I bet the watchtower is in like a beautiful island paradise. Ladies with coconut bras,
nicest
and all
place,
sorts of fun stuff.
Yep. And Sylus now has to travel on a journey with Sir Roland Wipe to the labyrinth. So Sylus is scared at first as they're traveling, but he feels better after they get ambushed by a bunch of bandits, and Sir Roland wipes them out. Get his name, obviously. He wipes them out. Hilarious, Charlie. You're supposed to laugh.
I laughed really hard when you said his name the first time. I feel like that's enough.
That's enough, I guess. So, Sylus is getting a little bit more confident. He's like, oh shit, this Roland Wipe guy, I knew he was tough, but he's like really good. And he's getting a little bit of training. He's feeling like, well, maybe this was a good thing after all. They reach the inn. They have a big old feast. Lots of fun. During it, though, Fraude scams Sylus out of his sword. and it gives him a new sword that she's telling him is better. This is magical, enchanted, and so Sylus loses his sword. Then we have introduce the whole Tom and Jerry thing between Meek and Miss Wicker's Whip.
Yeah.
Which leads to everyone getting food poisoning.
And I have a question about Miss Wicker's Whip. Is she the only person in the kitchen?
Yeah. It's just her.
Okay. Because I thought, I was figuring maybe there was
it's
like
meant to be
another
her
guy.
and Meek, but
Oh, and Meek
there could be another person we can add.
Well, I was thinking, you said it was Tom and Jerry, and sometimes Tom teams up with the dog of the house, and the dog's like this big lumbering guy who's just like quiet. And I'm like, maybe you could do that with this. You could have, there's the cook, and then there's the chef. Mrs. Wicker Whip. Miss Wicker Whip is the cook, is the chef.
You could have her son.
And then you have
something.
the cook, and his name is like Burl or something. It's like one syllable long.
I like Burl.
Burl. And he's just like a very quiet guy. Her nephew. Her slow nephew.
Yes.
There you go. And he just does what she says. And then we give a little bit of muscle to her. But don't have to be. Just wondering.
Okay, so everyone has food poisoning now. We leave the inn. They all vomit in the morning, and they go out. They leave the inn to go in the labyrinth. Everyone's a little sick still. They get into the labyrinth. This will be a couple minutes where they're dark tunnels and mazes and fighting at different skeletons and all types of monsters. And eventually they'll go into a room. And Roland White will just instantly get speared through the head. He'll be like, all right, stick with me, and we'll be okay. And then, boom, speared through the head.
Bam. Right there.
Which
I love it.
obviously leaves... actually, I misspoke there. So, as soon as they walk into the labyrinth, that happens. Mm-hmm. So, the first thing that happens right away is Sir Roland White dies immediately as soon as they walk in.
Good.
And the rest is... Sylus going through the labyrinth trying to find his way out because the door shuts behind them right away, and everyone else that's in the company with them is slowly dying. All the other heroes that were heading up as well. And he's running through the labyrinth alone, and he reaches the classic, Star Wars trash compactor room where the walls are coming in.
Yeah, classic.
And as the walls come in close, he climbs up to the top of the ceiling, and there's a vent, and he pushes it open and gets inside. And he starts crawling through, and he's able to reach, keeps crawling. Here's the screaming, the blood-curdling screaming, everyone dying below. But he's panicking and just keeps crawling, and eventually he just pops out, and he's outside. And it's raining, it's dark, and he trudges to the inn.
There you go. That's how we get to the first scene.
He crawls. Yeah, that's how we get to the inn, boom. All, completely full circle. Mm-hmm. And he later learns from Borg when he's retelling the story that Borg's like, oh, I don't know how so you climbed into the poison vents and you made it out? So you probably only have a couple minutes to live. So he's like, what? Those were poison vents? And this is when he finds out that the only reason he didn't die immediately is because his food poisoning had already completely destroyed his digestive system. And the way the poison works is that it turns whatever food you have in your stomach into boiling fire and just burns your insides. And since he had absolutely nothing in his stomach, he was able to make it out.
Nice.
And it's kind of like the reason everyone dies. We'll think about this later. The audience will think about this as you're getting fed a really good meal, and then you go in, and one of the big problems of the maze is that the poison will burn the food in your insides. So it's but what is Mrs. Wicker's Whip doing here?
Maybe Mrs. Wicker's Whip keeps that on the DL. That's information that only a few people know because she bribes them into not telling anyone so she can keep making food.
Yeah, and that will be one of the reasons that what's his name? Filber hasn't died yet, is because he doesn't. This huge wonderful meals that Mrs. Wicker's Whip makes for him, he doesn't ever eat them.
Good.
She's constantly making these amazing meals, and he just doesn't touch them. Because he's like, oh, I don't want to adventure on a full stomach,
you gotta
makes you slow.
Yeah, you gotta be fast, you gotta be quick, If I'm really hungry, I'll eat one of these biscuits.
The only hunger I need is the hunger of glory.
The hunger for gold and adventure and honor. Mrs. Wicker's whip. Ooh. And then he runs out the door before she can hit him with a... I'm imagining her just constantly having a rolling pin to hit people with. Maybe she can wear it like an adventurer wears a sword on like a scabbard, which is just a rolling pin. Just whacking people 24/7.
So the end of the episode, obviously he makes it back. We learn all that stuff. And he's about to leave. He's only had the one drink, and he gets hit with a massive bill. And he's like, Borg, what the hell? Like, I got one shot. I thought that was, for free.
Yeah, complimentary.
Like, he just gave it to me. I didn't even ask for it. And he's like, no, that shot's free. But your boss, Mr. Roland Wipe, didn't pay. So that massive feast you had yesterday, that's on you. Mm-hmm. And so he has to pay this huge bill. And he's like, I don't have any money. He's like, well, here's a mop.
Get to work, idiot.
And so that's how our guy has to now work at this inn.
I love it.
To pay off his debt.
Pay off a debt. You do love, I've noticed this a lot in TV shows that you do, is that, like, they'll do he's fucked, now he has to pay off a debt. Which I also like quite a bit. I think it's a fun trope.
Well, it's just the way the world works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Aren't
we all just paying off a debt?
End of the day, man.
So episode ideas, we're gonna have. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say that was my next idea, or next thought was like next episode ideas. I'm assuming this is gonna be a kind of show that kind of lampoons a lot of fantasy, tropes and stereotypes, right? So we'll have we could have an episode where a band of orcs come into town, but they're the most polite, nicest, most intelligent people you've ever met in your entire life.
Yeah, they're all like silk traders or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then the elves
big
come into town.
The clothes that they wear, very fashionable.
Very, very fashionable. They all have monocles and such. They have gold inlays on their tusks and that sort of thing. And then the elves come into town and they're basically like fantasy rednecks, And they're like, I'm trying to figure out what.
Oh, I would love fantasy redneck elves. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a amazing idea. I love it.
Because I'm trying to figure out how you could, in a fantasy setting, like roll coal, There's when you take the muffler off of your pickup truck to make the, like...
Oh, okay.
Make it so, like, you're spewing this, like, thick black, gas out of the back of your car rather than, like, safer, emissions. I'm trying to figure out what that could be, and I'm like, could it be, like... dragon, like they could have like a beast of burden that they all ride on, like a wyvern or something, and they like feed it a special kind of thing, and it just like shoots like this thick black gas out of its mouth before they like start flying off or something like that. But I don't know. But I do think it would be funny to have the fantasy rednecks, fantasy elf rednecks. Is good.
I like that. Some of the ideas that I had for episodes, we've got the Filber episode, so sort of the intro to him, where he comes in, he's a big old champion, and throughout the episode he continually returns with less and less limbs, and what's her name, Mrs. Wicker's whip, constantly tries to get him to feed him these giant feasts that he just won't eat. The B story of this is going to be Sylus trying to get the sword back from Fraude. And in this episode, he discovers her lies. Like, he's trying to get the sword back at the very end of the episode, and he goes into her room, and he finds just, like, a huge storehouse full, like, her room is huge, and there's just tons of treasure and all this stuff that she's fleeced off of people over the years. Mm-hmm. And he's, like, searching through, and he can't even find his sword.
It's just so much.
It's just so much stuff that she's been scamming people off of.
We could definitely do a fun, like, homage to Indiana Jones with him, like, going through, and she's got, like, this preposterously, like, massive, warehouse, and it's all, booby-trapped and shit, and he's just, like, putting his hand in front of the light, the arrows shoot out, he's, like, gotta weigh up a bag of sand to take away something, you know, a key to get into another thing.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Fun little Indiana Jones stuff. But then, because it's a comedy, obviously, the final hurdle, like, he'll see the sword, it's, you know, beautiful, and it's, like, right in a pedestal in the middle of the room. Final, you know, steps, he trips, falls, lands on his face, and, like, activates a trap that, like, causes the floor to, like, fall from underneath him, and the sword just plummets down, you know, thousands of feet into a ravine or something.
Yeah.
And it's just like, fuck. All this effort. I brought Ted with me. Nothing. He's dead. For nothing.
At least you don't have to pay him.
Yeah.
He's a mercenary.
Fucking idiot. Told him. Watch out for the spiders. Didn't listen.
Did not listen. So, next I've got the King's heir arrives to mock Sylus, so he comes thinking that, you know, Sylus is dead, and is even more delighted to learn that he's working at an inn to pay off a debt, and just is bullying him. But to get revenge, Sylus is able to pressure him into going into the labyrinth. He's like, "Oh, it's your sister in there. You should save your sister." You know, he turns the whole crowd of the inn against him, against the King's heir, to like get him to go into the labyrinth, and he's being, you know, he's like, he's feeling compelled now. He has to do it, or he's gonna lose honor and, you know, be shameful for the kingdom and his father. And so he goes in, but Sylus feels bad because he's, you know, basically killed this guy now. He's like, I hate him, but I didn't want to kill him. And so now he has to go back into the labyrinth and help him get out.
That's fun.
And the B story of this episode is going to be Meek starts training with a mercenary to do the labyrinth. She finds like a Braun character, or like, I've done a lot of Braun characters recently. Some sort of like, you know, tough older mercenary who's like kind of willing to teach her.
Yeah.
He came here, wasn't sure if he was going to do the labyrinth or not. And like, you know, feels, after he meets Meek, he's like, yeah, I'll train you up to do the labyrinth, you know, and maybe we'll go in together. And it ends with, right before they're about to go into the labyrinth, he chokes to death from Mrs. Wickerswift's food.
It turns out there was an ingredient in it that he was allergic to, and he didn't say, because it's like...
He's allergic to gluten.
He's allergic to gluten, and he doesn't have, like, celiacs. He'll die. It's like honey, or peanuts. His throat closes, and he just dies immediately. And for that episode, I think you could have a C plot of Fraude, just because I'm assuming the prince will travel with this huge entourage of, like, basically fantasy fuckboys. Like, that's really the only way I can think about it. It's just like they've all got slicked back hair, and they've all got gold chains, and that, you know, just like goofy Instagrammer guys, and just her like just fleecing them for everything they have. So they come into town with all of this gold and all of these cool like swords and armor and stuff, and they leave town in just the rattiest, ugliest leather like clothes and like wooden swords and stuff, but they're convinced that they've stepped up because, you know, whatever reason.
Fraude has convinced them,
That could
and part of that can also be like a, you know, Fraude is obviously very mean to Sylus, but over time, like when she sees other people being mean to him, she's like, all right, let's not. I can make fun of Fraude, you guys, or Sylus, but now you guys, I'm gonna ruin your lives because you're
picking
attacking
on
my friend here.
My bully victim. I'm the only one who's allowed to bully him.
Okay, so some of the reveals we're gonna get to in this show. So we're gonna learn that you know, as we go through, we'll learn that Princess Borg's daughter is actually adopted, and Borg's gonna say that, oh yeah, I saved her like years ago from a dungeon I did, and you know, she didn't have any parents, so she came back here, and that's why I'm raising her. And you know, that'll be just a casual thing we learn, and as we go on, it's become more and more apparent that Princess is the princess.
Yeah, I was going to say
that's at the end of that's supposed to be at the end of this thing, and Borg has actually completed this dungeon years ago and saved the princess, and no one, you know, Borg is he's too old to even remember that he did it because he's done so many dungeons.
He's just such a forgetful old man that he's just like, yeah, whatever, you know. It couldn't have been this dungeon because that tree wasn't there when I came out. You know, just like something so ridiculous. It's like, yeah, somebody planted the tree after you left. It was like, nah, that's no. didn't happen like that.
And Princess, she just doesn't want to go back to her father and like the responsibilities of her lifestyle. She likes being a free, heavy drinking. She has absolutely no responsibilities at this place, and she enjoys the inn and the people that work there.
That would then we do have to have a good reason that she doesn't talk to her brother when he's there.
That's the thing, is that her brother is very young, and she's like 20 something. Like she never even knew her brother.
Yeah,
that's the idea.
Okay,
never even met her.
Yeah, and she doesn't.
Or she probably knew him when he was a baby. And she'll be really drunk there in that episode, and we'll have like a thing that's slightly revealing, and she was like, "You're a stupid baby. You're always stupid, fugly baby." And like she'll say something like that, and she'll almost get stabbed by one of his guards because they're like, "Don't say that about the prince. How dare you?"
And then the barman, like the old Borg, will just like, as soon as she's about to get stabbed, he'll just like launch into a story. The entire scene he's just been staring off into space in the background. And as the knife comes out, hey, so one time when I was young, I went and I fought a giant sea monster, right? I was swimming around in a lake.
Oh, that would be great if he catches the knife.
Yeah.
He looks into the guy's eyes, and you're like, what the fuck is he gonna say? He's like, when I was young, blah, and he jumps into the story. And the guys are like, is this story gonna reach something that makes sense for? I thought this was gonna be a big moral tirade about why we should stab her, but like he gets lost in his own story.
Like, what?
And he's like, why were we talking about this?
No, I was talking about
Here's
a fish I caught. It was so big, it was so cool. It was like that big. Brought it back here, cooked it up real nice, delicious. A little bit of lemon, a little bit of pepper. Come on, nothing better, baby. What were we talking about?
Nothing better, baby.
What were we talking about?
Yeah. And then also another thing we're gonna get is the tunnel that Sylus found is actually just a shortcut through the entire maze, through the entire labyrinth. If he just follows the vents to the end, he'll get to the end of the labyrinth. You just have to not eat anything and go through the shortcut.
And what's at the end?
And then at the end there'll be a dragon, and we'll have this big fight at the end where they're fighting the dragon. And the way it's ultimately killed is that early in the fight, Filbur is going to get eaten by the dragon.
Okay.
Just right away. Just chomp. And they're like, oh, fuck, Filbur finally died. And we get to the end of this episode, and, they're about to get killed by the dragon. Sylus is going to get slain. And a sword is going to burst through the dragon's stomach, and it's going to be Filbur. He's still alive from the dragon's stomach.
Here's my idea.
Tears his way out.
For that scene is that Filbur has, first episode, we see him, he'll have lost a foot. Second episode, he'll have lost, up to the knee. Third episode, he'll have lost, the whole leg. I say that he replaces the leg with, a sword, right? So instead of a regular prosthetic leg, he's got a sword peg leg. And so that's the sword that pops out, is him just, kicking it really hard. And so he's coming out thigh first of the dragon's stomach. He's like, yeah, this is great. Oh, and he falls over. Of course. Comedy.
I'm thinking that can happen. He'll lose his leg late on in the series and get replaced. Because I'm thinking throughout the show, Filbur, he'll from the beginning to the end of the first season, he'll lose all of his limbs, and you'll be like, how is this guy gonna keep going? He's all robotic limbs. And the beginning of the second season, he'll have all of his stuff back, and be like, what happened? He's like, oh, she gave me all my limbs back.
Yeah, easy peasy. Wasn't that hard. Gave her $30.
And then, he'll lose more limbs, and again, he'll come back, if there's a third season, he'll come back, and he'll stitched on Frankenstein limbs. And this is how I'm going now. And then fourth season, it's the robotics, that's what we'll get the sword.
Yeah, he's got a sword leg.
Prosthetics, I mean.
Yeah.
But that's my show.
The Bitter End
I forgot,
Inn.
what is it? The Bitter End Inn. Yeah, that's
I like the Bitter End Inn.
The Bitter End Inn.
The BEI. I often think about our shows, because our titles aren't usually that short. I think about them, and it's how would our fans shorten our names? The BEI. I love BEI. It's my favorite show on right now. But yeah, The Bitter End Inn.
The Bitter End Inn.
Fan. I like a comedy. I like.
They'd probably call it The Bitter End.
Yeah, they could probably call it bitter. I was watching Bitter earlier today. Oh my god, can you believe Sylus fucking beat the shit out of that guy with 2 punches, knocked him out. I don't know. Yeah, I like it. I'm a big fan. And I am also a big fan of you, listeners. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. And remember, we will be here next week, the brand new televisual series for you to imagine and enjoy. Have a good night, everyone.
Goodbye.